because they've changed some things. They've changed the syntax. They've added type functions, added read-only tables. It works in a bit different way. It's a complete rewrite of the type solver, so it's not backwards compatible, which means when I switch, I get thousands, like code base of like 20,000 lines, and it's all filled with errors. I'm not looking forward to the day where I have to manually go through all of them to do that.
I'll see what happens when I turn it on SCR's code base, and I'll let you know what the count is, and maybe that can be an extra bonus trivia question if you can guess how many errors that throws up. Welcome back to Beyond the Blocks. The weekend that we're filming this is the end of Thanksgiving in the US, so Fedora's on holiday, and so was most of Roblox last week as well. But while we were recording our safety deep dive that went out last week, it seems Roblox's engineers were hard at work wrapping everything up before the holidays. So we're going to give a roundup today of all the features from the last couple of weeks. But first, we're your hosts. I'm Adam.
And I'm Anthony.
So we're going to start with a nice upgrade to community announcements on Roblox. Roblox have rolled out a new direct way to write good-looking announcements on the platform without using Gilded. So, as you know, Gilded is being sunset towards the end of this year. I think we're not very far away from it being shut down at all. I think it's less than 3 weeks away, maybe even 2 weeks. So this replaces the previous Gilded integration that was available there. So previously you could either do the old shout system, which was just a very small amount of text, and you couldn't do very much with it, or you could integrate with Gilded, in which case you could write full multiple paragraph announcements, and that would show up if you had it integrated with your Roblox community. This now replaces all of that, and this is a new direct built-in feature where creators can write updates, talk about events, share important news with their communities without having to use an external tool. What's really nice here as well is that you can optionally add an image as well to this announcement, which makes it look much more professional. And depending on, I can imagine some studios probably will put quite a bit of effort into those images and sort of make them look really fancy. Or if you're a bit of a smaller studio, maybe you just put a screenshot of like the update that you're talking about, just to show people what they can expect. So yeah, very excited for this as someone who used Gilded to try and write nicer announcements for my communities. This is a welcome change that we knew was coming, but thankfully is here before Gilded is sunset rather than afterwards.
Yeah, you were able to add images in your Gilded post, and it would sort of translate to the group announcement. I was going to say group shout, but I think the problem before was like sometimes the caption would be clipped, like the content, and the title, like it would never turn out exactly how you wanted it to. It felt like it was just kind of badly translating what was in Gilded to what was in the group, which is kind of not ideal considering most of the time we were doing a Gilded post, it was just so we could get it to show in the group. So it's nice that the kind of priorities are more where they should be now, I think.
Yeah, definitely. That was it. You would write it to maybe make it look nice in Gilded, or use Gilded's tools to format it in Markdown, but then that wouldn't necessarily translate. With this, you're editing directly on Roblox. It's fairly basic. It is just text and line breaks, but at least you can see what it should look like. I did give this a go, and the image it put, at least on the desktop, was quite a high aspect ratio, as in it was quite landscape. So it was quite cropped top and bottom.
Yeah, they do crop our images all the time.
Yeah.
There's probably some guidelines behind that, but
maybe, yeah. You will have to experiment with it a little bit and try not to put anything too close to the edge of the images. But yeah, I think this is great. And I just double checked. Gilded gets sunset on December the 19th. So as this comes out, I think that is just over 2 weeks. So yeah, try out the new announcements. I think it's a good update.
Okay, next up we have the general release of Luau's new type solver. So Luau's new type solver is moving out of studio beta and is being rolled out to all users in no check and non-strict modes. So this upgrade will significantly improve type inference, reduce false positives, and introduces new features such as type functions and read-only tables. Adam, do you have any experience using Luau type solver?
A little bit. We've used it in some places. I think Stepford County Railway is probably the biggest code base that I've worked on, and it's quite an old code base at this
Hmm.
point, long before Luau was rolled out, and so we're sort of incrementally trying to
Yeah.
implement some of these type solvings. So we can't necessarily be super strict with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time we're sort of relying on inference of types,
Hmm.
and it hasn't always been perfect because we've kind of got an object oriented approach to a lot of it. And
Those can
in
be quite
many
tricky to
cases,
type.
exactly, the inference isn't great, and manually going and adding those types isn't fantastic either.
Hmm.
So yeah, quite excited to see what this brings. On the lanes, we actually moved over to Roblox TypeScript and are trying that out as well, which has other benefits
Yeah.
beyond just the typing as well.
I think a lot of
It
these
makes UI
features,
work nice.
I think a lot of these features are sort of inspired by TypeScript. I think type functions is
Yes.
probably one of those things that TypeScript has. Correct me if
That's
I'm wrong.
it. So, yeah, absolutely. I think once you get used to how things work in TypeScript and get your head around generics and various things like that, you can sort of port that over to Luau fairly easily with some of the things that they've been rolling out. But because of that code base being in TypeScript, I've probably not been up to speed with all the
Hmm.
latest changes to
Yeah.
Luau. So I'm quite interested to hear about things like read-only tables as well.
The
That's very
problem
exciting stuff.
with my stuff is a lot of my stuff is now in strict mode, but it's in strict mode in the old type solver. And I
I
believe the good
see.
news for people is that the non-strict mode is very easy to convert over. In fact, it should be sort of more generous now. It's sort of more, it understands to only give an error when it's a guaranteed runtime error. But the strict mode, because they've changed some things, they've changed the syntax, they've added type functions, added read-only tables. Um, it works in a bit different way. It's a complete rewrite of the type solver. So it's not backwards compatible, which means when I switch, I get thousands, like code base of like 20,000 lines of code plus, and it's all filled with errors. So I really do want to convert over, but I'm not looking forward to the day where I have to manually go through all of them um, to do that. But like I said, the good news
Yeah, it sounds
is,
like a bit of an uphill struggle.
yeah, the good news is this coming out of beta um, is only automatic for the no check, which, I mean, I don't know if that's even any different because you're not checking anything. But the no check and the non-strict modes, and to enable it on strict mode, they are adding a new setting called use new Luau type solver. Um, I think I'm pronouncing Luau correctly. In my head, I say
I
Lua
believe
U.
that's how it's
Yeah,
pronounced.
in my head, I say Lua U, but when I'm discussing it with people, they tend to correct me and say Lua. So I think maybe make fun of us in the comments if that's wrong. But yeah, there are still a number of known issues. This is something that's been in development for years, I think, and it's always been a bit experimental. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but there's some sort of exciting new technology behind it.
Yeah, it's
There's a
interesting.
lot of
So I
recursion that goes
presume
into type checking.
for a lot of the like simple types, this shouldn't change
Yeah.
anything. Like you still same syntax. If you're casting something as a string, like that's nice and easy. But it's these more
Hmm.
complicated cases and the
Hmm.
inference and things where this is mostly affected. Is that right?
Yeah. Better inference, especially in non-strict mode. Relaxed typecasting.
Nice. Well, I'll have to give that a go. I'll see what happens when I turn it on SCR's code base, and I'll let you know what the count is, and maybe that can be an extra bonus trivia question if you can guess how many errors that throws up. But yeah, it does sound like an improvement, definitely for new code bases. If you're just starting out with a blank slate, it sounds great.
I will just fill people in case they're not super technical with Roblox programming. The purpose of this, if you're completely lost for the last 5-10 minutes, the purpose of this is basically just reducing bugs before you press play. Basically, um, it just like kind of it's kind of a system that allows you to verify bits of your code before it runs, to make sure you're not doing any silly stuff like adding numbers to strings. Yeah, what do you have next for us, Adam? I think that's it on this topic.
Yeah, up next we've got a nice upgrade to extended services. So we're finally getting usage notifications for data storage being added to the extended services service. So earlier this year in April, we had data store access and storage limits that were announced, and they don't actually go into effect until April of the coming year, so April 2026, and shouldn't affect very many experiences. The limits that Roblox gives us are already quite generous, and it's unlikely that you're going to hit them without knowing that you're one of those experiences that would be affected. But for those few that are, and maybe some more that get created in the future, you will now at least receive notifications when you're getting close to those limits, when you're about to be charged for the extended limits that you can get through extended services. You'll know when you're at 60%, 80%, 90%, and 100% of the consumption thresholds that Roblox have put in place. And obviously, when you exceed 100%, that's when you start seeing your costs show up in the data stores manager now, which is quite nice. As part of this, they also rolled out the ability to delete and revert data in the data stores manager as well. Previously, you could have a look, like read the data, but you couldn't actually delete it from the data store manager.
Still can't edit it though.
No,
Which is a bit
still
annoying.
not able to edit.
Still have to
So
open
you can
Studio
sort of
and open
you
Data
can
Store
read,
Editor.
you can delete, and you can revert, but you can't edit, which possibly is a good thing. I think most users of data stores are sort of your code is writing to it, and you probably end up messing things up by doing it manually. But for some smaller, simpler things, it has been a bit annoying not being able to edit. But yeah, we have delete and revert now at least. So if you are getting close to this limit and you need to delete a bunch of data you don't actually need anymore, theoretically you could do that. Lumped in with this as well is a batch processor that Roblox have been using internally for large-scale data processing. That's now open source. So this is a sort of a command line tool that you can use that uses I think it uses OpenCloud to do a bunch of transformations on your data, basically. So say you wanted to delete a whole data store of data and you had millions of keys in there, this batch processor will go through and be able to do that for you.
I assume it's just using the Open Cloud API.
Yeah, exactly. So I think with a lot of these dashboards that we get on the Creator Hub, there's a Open Cloud API equivalent. So I believe the delete and the delete and the revert options are available through Open Cloud as well. We also got a few extra bits to extended services. I'll just call them out quickly. One is text-to-speech is now there. So we talked a little bit earlier this year when text-to-speech rolled out that there were some limits on how much you could generate. You'll now be able to buy additional usage in extended services. You'll also get that for speech-to-text early next year, so that one's not quite ready. So text-to-speech is out now, speech-to-text coming soon. And they've rolled it out to more countries as well. So Italy, Spain, Singapore, Netherlands, and a few others have been added as countries that can now pay for these extended services. I think that's pretty much everything I had on extended services. Like I say, most people won't be affected by this, but if you're a heavy user of one of these limited APIs,
I think this might be 20 people out of, I think it was double digits number of games out of something million games. So if you're affected by this, the chances are you're not watching right now.
I think probability-wise, maybe. I think maybe some of the things like text-to-speech and speech-to-text, we might see a few more games trying to use those heavily. We talked about some interesting and innovative uses of those. And yeah, absolutely, future-proofing. If we do see a world where Roblox is full of NPCs that are talking to you, maybe some games might end up reaching those limits and wanting to pay for a bit more. So I think it's good that the option's there.
Yeah.
Sort of linked to this, the idea of limits, there is also an observability dashboard that's being rolled out for HTTP service. I don't think we have extended services for when you reach the HTTP limit. Wonder if that's coming soon. But what this dashboard will let you see is how many requests you're making, whether they're succeeding or failing, and what the error codes are. And also, just help you debug any issues that you might have with HTTP service a bit more effectively.
This is good. We've had this for data store service for a while.
Exactly.
And it's really nice when you can get a breakdown of the errors that are happening.
Yeah, that's it. Roblox has access to this information, right? So surfacing it to the dev is only a good thing.
Sometimes when Roblox goes down, you have like a massive spike on the graph.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I guess for people who don't necessarily use HTTP service much, essentially it allows you to make web requests outside of Roblox to anywhere on the internet. HTTP request is just you pinging some sort of endpoint somewhere, usually with some data, and getting a response and doing something with that. So, for example, in a couple of our games, we've got AWS, which is Amazon Web Services. We've got a few custom APIs there that do a few things, and we might make requests to that from within the game server, sending some information about what's happening or what players are doing. And if that errors, the only way that we can really see that right now is either if we output that error using Roblox's normal sort of console logs and pick that up, or if we're monitoring this at the other end on our custom API. But now with this, you'll be able to monitor it on the Roblox side and just have all of that built in. And you can see if you typed your web address wrong and everything's coming back with 404s, you'll see a big spike of 404s. You know, that sort of thing will be there. So yeah, quite a nice handy dashboard. The Creator Hub is getting quite busy now with all the dashboards. We've got the safety ones, we've got all the analytics. Yeah, it's fantastic to just dig through and see what's going on.
Okay, I think now it's time to move on to the trivia. So last week's trivia question was, Roblox announced a major economy milestone in 2025. How much did creators globally earn via DevX from March 2024 to March 2025? Do you know the answer?
Yes.
I saw this on LinkedIn.
You saw it on LinkedIn.
I was procrastinating.
I think that you mentioned it at RDC as well, which is where I think I had the idea of 1 billion in my mind when we spoke about this a couple weeks ago. Fedor and I sort of presented this question. I think Fedor's guess was sort of in the hundreds of millions. I think I was like, it's probably around the billion. And
$1 billion.
I saw
$1 billion.
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely huge. I think our regular trivia guesser Aidan Parker also guessed that in the comments on YouTube as well.
Amazing.
But it's huge numbers.
Yeah.
Hard to really process what that means.
Yeah, and it is very interesting that this happened before like Grow a Garden, Steal a Brain Rot. So
yeah,
the potential for next year is very high. I'm really interested to see how have those games just sort of cannibalized other games, or have they actually brought new revenue to Roblox?
Yes, that's a really interesting point, because you said up to March 2025, right? And we saw the weekend after weekend of record breaking that was happening in terms of concurrent users on Roblox was after that. So you'd think that would at least have brought some revenue. We'll have to see. Okay,
so are we ready for this episode's question? It is, what was the most popular Roblox concert experience and how many players attended? Do you have any idea?
I have absolutely no idea.
Same.
I remember when concerts first came to Roblox, like that was a really, really interesting thing. They've been around a while. The first one I remember seeing, like sort of actually going into the experience and seeing, was a Lil Nas X one.
That's literally what I had on my mind, yeah.
I don't know if that was the first, but it was definitely the first one that I was aware of. And that was, I'm pretty sure we had an absolutely like gigantic Lil Nas X, like much, much larger than life, and you're sort of running around trying not to be stomped on by him as he's dancing around singing songs. But then other ones I've seen, the 21 Pilots concert experience was quite good for me. I'm a big fan of theirs, so that was a really, really good one. And I think Royal Blood, I also went and watched that one as well. That's just the kind of music that I like, but I know there have been others in other genres as well that I've maybe not attended. I think Zara Larsson did one as well.
Yeah.
And then on other platforms, I remember Sabrina Carpenter did Fortnite. So I know that other platforms have been trying to do concerts as well. But what was the question? The most popular?
Yeah, which one was the most popular?
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't have the answer for that. Well, let us know in the comments if you have any ideas of the answer to the trivia question, and a guess on how many players it was that attended. So back to our weekly roundup of headlines, and I've got the next one, which was Roblox updating the requirements for receiving the verified badge as an experienced contributor, making it a little bit easier to get verified if you're not the owner of a game. So the verified badge is that sort of blue tilted square, looks like the Roblox logo, but with a check mark in the middle of it that you'll see next to some creators' names. And previously for experienced creators, only the owners of the experience with over 1 million playtime hours in the past 90 days could qualify for that tick. Now, with this new update to the requirements, contributors who receive an automatic group payout of 10% or more from that experience should also be eligible. So this is probably quite a positive change for contributors to games. I know that, you know, a lot of games on the platforms, there's a lot of studios, there's a lot of independent groups. It's very rare at this point, I think, that you sort of have a completely solo venture. Roblox is becoming a more complicated platform. You're needing people who can be experts in 3D modeling, people who can be experts in programming, people who can be experts in environmental design and those sorts of things. So it's nice to see recognition for some of the other contributors. I guess the only downside is you have to be managing that through a group payout for this to sort of count. If you're paying those creators outside of Roblox, then there's no way for Roblox to necessarily see that contribution. So that's the only limitation here. Anthony, what do you think about this as a contributor to a game?
I'm very excited. I have been set up with a 10% payout, which is which I'm giving straight back.
So did you guys set that up specifically to give you the eligibility for this?
Yeah. I think it used to be a bit easier to get badges for contributors. I don't know if you know.
Okay.
I forgot what the old process was, but I remember lots of people saying there were issues with people selling badges. Yeah, I think that was one of the cited reasons when we sort of inquired about why we can't get verified badges, is that
Yeah.
people get them and sell them. So
I don't know the exact process that used to be. I believe it was something along the lines of the experienced owner sort of almost gets it automatically if their game is getting that much playtime, and then they would have to go to Roblox and sort of request, oh, this other person's also a contributor, can you give them one? So I could see how that could lead to selling.
Now you have
this feels a little bit more automatic, you know, they can verify it.
You have to either pay them 10% of your Robux or trust them to borrow 10% of your Robux. So I think, yeah, it's probably less likely that we're going to see people selling verified badges using this method. So it seems like a little bit of a hack, but I think it could work.
I don't think it's not so much a hack, right? It's like a verification method, but it is a little bit annoying that you now have to, presumably you're going to have to set up DevX to exchange that without losing any.
Full reference about why this is annoying, because I think a lot of you might not understand why it's a bit of a problem for us, is we DevX to a company. So like all of the DevX is central, and then we pay everyone in real money. We don't. It's very difficult you can't just put in a contract, I'm going to pay you, I don't know, 10% of our Robux or like a certain amount of Robux. I don't think that's probably not very legally enforceable. It's not a currency legally, so it is a bit annoying, but it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. We do the same. So yeah, it would be quite annoying to be giving contributors 10%. Also, depending on the size of the studio or the group, 10% could be quite a lot. And also this is automatic group payouts. I think it can be scoped to an experience, which at least gives you that, because I think they rolled that out at some point. I'm not sure exactly when, but instead of it just being the whole group's pot that you're having to split, you can, per experience, sort of say 10% from this game goes to Anthony, but this game you get 0% because you're not actually a contributor on that one. So it from my understanding of reading this, it's 10% on at least the experience that you want to be counted in terms of the playtime hours. But yeah, it does seem a bit frustrating that you have to manage it through Roblox for that verification badge. But hopefully it's a positive thing for a lot of people in terms of getting that badge and Roblox reintroducing sort of contributor badges.
Okay, so the next topic we have for you is the new ReflectionService API, which is a brand new service that Roblox have added to let developers programmatically inspect the Roblox engine API surface. So what that means essentially is tools and plugins can analyze class or property information, and that reacts to any engine changes that Roblox push. That will be automatically updated straight away. So there's no need to maintain some kind of list if you're making a tool that's aimed to help developers. So some of the methods are get class, get classes, and get properties of class. So essentially replaces, I think it's a very old method where the community would maintain a big list of classes and their properties, and then that would be required through HTTP service. So it's making tool making a little bit easier to maintain.
The theme of this episode is definitely niche little announcements that sort of maybe affect like a small subset of developers, but I fall into this one. I've got a plugin to help you sort of select and find things within your workspace. And right now we're doing exactly what you said, a HTTP request to, I think, a GitHub file basically that gets updated with the API dump, because robots are rolling out an update to the engine pretty much every single week, and usually there's slight tweaks to APIs. Text chat service comes out and changes everything. Text to speech comes out, adds some new things. I don't want to have to keep updating my plugin every single time, so it's that automatic behavior. I don't think there's too much use for this in terms of runtime and like actual games using this, but tools and plugins, I think it will save us some HTTP requests and help with the accuracy of what we've got.
And that also,
presuming that this is perfectly one-to-one with the API. I hope that this is just automated behind the scenes, and therefore there's no chance of this being out of date.
Yeah, and that also helps with peace of mind installing plugins as well, because now you won't have to give as many plugins permissions to use HTTP service, which again puts your mind at ease that they're not just making a file of your game and then sending it to their external server.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I had to put that permission in for the plugin that I was talking about. I won't need to ask for any permissions after this.
There are lots of plugins.
Fantastic.
Yeah, there are lots of plugins that would benefit from this. I think there's like reclass, any sort of UI helping plugin, lots of like any sort of scripting helping plugin. So yeah, huge potential for this. And you can also access the varying properties that you can see depending on the security level of your script as well.
Yeah, it sounds really, really useful. I'm gonna have a go with this after this recording. Perfect. On to our last change for this episode, talking about the new Studio UI. So I think a lot of people now have experienced the new UI, which I believe is still in beta and still is after this announcement, but we are nearing the full release that should happen early next year. And I think the UI is slowly getting more and more useful with each update. It was quite a sudden change, quite a shock to see the new UI. It is quite different from the old one. We have quite a different sort of ribbon with these tabs. But what that allows you to do is, customize the tabs that you can add to there. And we've seen some really interesting and creative tabs. So you can make Studio a bit more your own as part of this. So this latest release, there was just another full rollout to everybody that included a minor settings tweak, a settings reset, if you will, the compact layout where the icons are just slightly smaller and you can fit a bit more onto your custom tabs. That's now the default, but you can switch back to less compact layout just by right-clicking on the toolbar. And we've got, well, I guess they just summarize all the improvements that they've been making to the UI. So we've got expanded menus. There's just more efficient access to a lot of the actions and operations. So that was my bugbear with the new UI to begin with. A lot of actions got hidden away, and they've expanded quite a lot of what the different default tabs and default menus include now. They've consolidated play and test controls, which is nice. All the testing tools are grouped together in one location. Again, another bugbear I had to make a custom tab to put all the testing stuff together. That sounds like that's been solved now and put together. And as I said, there's the customizable ribbon tabs, which I discovered with this announcement. You can sort of customize through JSON files, and you can even share community-made toolbars. I believe so, yeah. I
remember
need
it
to
being
dig
work
into
in
it a bit
progress
more.
the last time but I remember being very, very much looking forward to it because we have some very specific workflows.
Yeah, my understanding is that as of this update, you can now use those and sort of import other people's toolbars. So that's really, really exciting. And you can also sort of, as part of those toolbars, mix the built-in tools with plugin tools,
that would
which
be
is
awesome.
Again just so nice. If you could have all your movement tools and then say you have a plugin that just helps with building and that's just right next to them.
Yeah.
It saves switching backwards and forwards. I used to hate having to switch back and forward to the plugins tab and the other tabs. So yeah, it's getting there. It's really, really, really helpful at this point.
I think
so
what I immediately liked about this update is probably the main thing for me, and it sounds stupid, is the fact that on Mac it actually uses the menu bar, which I remember the old Roblox Studio UI for Mac was, I think the old UI was made in Qt, right? Which is like, is that mainly a Windows thing?
I think so. So
it
sort of there was a compatibility layer or something going on.
Yeah, it just seemed very clunky and not very native for Mac. And I haven't actually used the new one on Windows, but from what I've heard and from what I've seen, it looks like they flipped it the other way around, and it's now a little bit cleaner on Mac because you have sort of an extra menu bar on Windows, whereas on Mac your menus are just in the native menu bar.
Yeah, I mean, I think on Windows it's quite typical for Windows applications that like sort of having that extra bar. It is always visible. Some programs hide it, and you have to like press the Alt key, and then it appears. It's always visible on Studio, but
I think it was in the original Studio
generally
design.
Cleaner.
I think it was in the original Studio design in like 2012, and they sort of brought it back.
I think so. But yeah, it's good to know that the Mac support is better. I am predominantly Windows, so I've not experienced Studio on Mac. But interestingly, it's no longer built in Qt, like you say. It's now sort of native for the application menus, but then the rest of it is I believe using Luau using React. So we talked about that not that long ago about Roblox sort of using those tools to themselves internally. That extends to Studio as well. But it means that they can do quite interesting and clever things with the tabs, with the toolbars, with the layout. So I like where it's heading. And like I say, the general release should be at some point early next year. I did have one thing that was sort of linked to this as well, which was when the Studio UI first came into beta, we also got Studio comments. And this is an interesting feature that I think some people just completely ignore and haven't used yet. And
those are the things around the map you can
put. A bit harder.
Like you can put them around. Yeah, we use those for like a day, and then kind of got
how did you find them? What made you not use them after a day?
I mean, we don't really tend to work on the map collaboratively, to be honest. Our map's big, and I think you just forget about them. Like we just send each other messages on Discord, just like text each other, call each other. So it's not been. I can imagine it being a thing for like slightly bigger studios where you've got multiple people working on a map, maybe like a slightly smaller map where they're all going to be in front of you. Finish off this thing, or maybe like a little comment, this model could be replaced, or more infilling of things here.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess the email digest probably does solve that problem a little bit, because they're not. If you don't open Studio for a while, then you're not going to miss all the comments that your colleague has left. Although
yeah, exactly. So this new feature is exactly that email digest of just everything that has been left in Studio in terms of comments. I believe they're just sent to all of the contributors, but I think you can opt in or opt out of different sort of resolution of what you're receiving. So whether you're just receiving mentions or you're just receiving sort of replies, whether you receive a notification every time a comment gets resolved and closed, or, if you just wanted to unsubscribe from a whole place or a whole thread of comments, you can do that as well. So this does seem like a nice way to make sure you've not missed something, because I find the 3D comments helpful. We've been using them a little bit in the lanes where we're sort of redoing the environment and redoing the code and sort of tweaking a few bits and pieces. And it's nice as a to-do. Sometimes people are leaving it as a to-do for themselves, of just like swap out this chair for something nicer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a discussion of, do you think this looks okay here? And someone else responds and says, yeah, it looks fine. And because they're sort of located in 3D space, instead of one of you having to take a bunch of screenshots and then me going, oh, I'd like to see it from this other angle, and I have to then open the place to go find it anyway. So, I'd have to open the place either way. Having it tagged on the exact item, I can fly there in studio and just have a look around. It's not a massive map, it's mostly just a building, so maybe for bigger maps it's harder. But the one problem with comments is if one of my collaborators goes in, leaves a load of comments everywhere, and I haven't opened Studio for a little while, I have no idea that they've added all those comments. Yeah. So I think that's what this digest solves, as you say. It sort of summarizes that and lets me know, I should go and have a look, and lets you know what's happened. So I think this is a step towards comments being more useful, and maybe there's something that you and others might want to try a bit more now that they've added this feature. I'll be honest, we still do discuss things in Discord, because if you want a detailed conversation or you want a call with someone to talk about it or whatever, suddenly you've broken out of that comment thread and then it's kind of useless. And I think most collaborators will be in some sort of group with each other. I don't really see a world where you're working with people in Studio and your only form of communication is Studio comments. But like I say, having it tagged to somewhere in 3D space can be useful. So this just slightly adds to that utility, I think. But yeah, that's all I had on comments, and I think that's all we've got for this episode.
Well, that's all we've got for you this week. Come back next episode for the latest Roblox news and features. Be sure to like, share, and let us know your thoughts in the comments, along with your answer to the trivia question, which was the most popular Roblox concert and how many people attended.
Beyond the Blox is produced by Seb Jensen for Last Level Studios. Watch on YouTube or Spotify, listen wherever you get your podcasts, and catch highlights every week on Reels, Shorts, and TikTok. Visit lastlevel.co.uk/podcast for more.